The diner door creaked open with a low groan as the sound of roaring engines faded outside. The morning light spilled through the windows, catching the dust in the air, and the gleam of black leather jackets patched with the name Iron Souls. The customers in the diner stiffened as four men walked in, broad, tattooed, and carrying the kind of quiet intensity that made everyone move out of their way. They weren't the kind of men you wanted to anger. They carried stories in their scars, and trouble seemed to follow wherever they went. But today, the real story wasn't about them. It was about a girl, a young waitress named Lena. She had that kind of soft beauty that didn't shout for attention. Her hair was tied neatly, her smile small but polite. Yet behind that smile, her eyes carried the kind of sadness only those who have learned to hide pain could understand. As she poured coffee for one of the regulars, the leader of the gang, a man everyone only knew as Rex, noticed something others hadn't. When the sleeve of her cardigan slipped just a little, it revealed faint marks, bruises that ran along her wrist like old, silent shadows of violence. Then he saw another along her jawline, barely covered by makeup. Her hand trembled slightly as she filled the cup, and the coffee nearly spilled. Rex's eyes, dark and sharp as steel, caught every detail. Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of standing up for others, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. Your support helps us share more stories that remind the world there's still good in people. The atmosphere in the diner was tense. The other bikers joked quietly, unaware of what Rex had noticed. Lena tried to move quickly, staying busy, her smile forced. But when she turned toward the back counter, her sweater slid slightly again, and the edge of a deep, purple bruise peeked from beneath the fabric. Rex's jaw tightened. He had seen bruises like those before on women who had been trapped in lives filled with fear. After a few minutes, Rex spoke up, his voice calm but firm as thunder. "Miss, could you bring us some more coffee?" he said, his eyes locked on hers. She nodded quickly, forcing a small smile, and went to the pot. But as she turned, her hand brushed a cup, sending it crashing to the floor. The sound echoed, drawing every eye in the diner. Her face went pale. She whispered an apology and knelt down to pick up the pieces. As she did, the hem of her cardigan lifted, and this time Rex saw it clearly, a large bruise running up her arm. The sight hit him like a punch. He looked around the diner, scanning every face, until his eyes settled on a man sitting at the counter, thick-necked, bald, wearing a smirk that could curdle blood. He had been watching Lena the entire time, not with affection but with control. Rex recognized that look instantly. The man wasn't just a customer, he was the source of those bruises. Something inside Rex shifted. For years he'd lived by a code, never get involved, never play the hero. But at that moment all those rules felt meaningless. When Lena returned to refill his cup, Rex reached out gently, his rough hand steady. "You okay, darlin'?" he asked softly, his voice almost a whisper. She froze, then forced a shaky nod. "Yes, sir," she replied, barely audible, but her eyes told the truth, she was. Rex leaned back, watching her walk away. His brothers noticed the change in his expression. They'd seen it before, that look that meant something was about to happen. Minutes later, the bald man stood up, walking behind the counter. He grabbed Lena by the wrist, hard enough for her to gasp. "You're getting clumsy again," he muttered under his breath, not realizing the entire diner had gone silent. That was all Rex needed. He stood, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. The sound cut through the air like a blade. Everyone turned to watch. The bald man looked up, confused, until he saw Rex walking toward him. Rex's eyes were cold fire. "Let go of her," he said quietly. The man scoffed, tightening his grip. "Mind your business, biker." Rex's voice dropped lower, dangerous and still. "You just made it my business." Before anyone could blink, Rex grabbed the man's wrist and twisted it until the man cried out, forcing him to release Lena. The diner gasped. The other bikers stood, forming a silent wall behind their leader. The man stumbled back, clutching his wrist, his confidence fading fast. "You like hurting women," Rex asked, his voice trembling with fury. "Try someone who fights back." The man muttered a curse and swung at him, but Rex caught the punch midair and slammed him against the counter. The plates rattled, the ketchup bottle fell, and everyone froze except Lena, who stood in stunned silence, tears forming in her eyes. Rex leaned close, his voice a growl. "You ever touch her again, you'll answer to all of us." Then just as quickly he let go. The man stumbled away, humiliated, clutching his arm, and stormed out of the diner. The sound of his truck roaring off was the only noise that broke the silence. For a long moment no one spoke. The customers stared, speechless. Lena stood motionless, the coffee pot still trembling in her hand. Finally, Rex looked at her and said softly, "You don't have to stay with him. You got people now." She blinked, unsure whether to believe him. But the way he said it, calm, certain, and kind, made her heart stir for the first time in years. After the incident, Rex and his crew stayed for a while, finishing their meal in silence. But when they left, they handed Lena a small card. On it was a phone number and 2 words: Iron Soul's family. The next day, the bald man didn't show up. Neither did he the day after. A week later, Lena gathered the courage to leave her house and went to the police. With the help of Rex's crew, who quietly backed her with protection and testimony, her abuser was arrested for assault and harassment. The whole town was stunned. For years, people had known something wasn't right, but no one had stepped up, until a biker gang did. From that day on, the Iron Souls weren't just the bad men on bikes anymore. They became local heroes. They fixed bikes for kids who couldn't afford them, helped the homeless with food drives, and stood guard for women who needed protection leaving abusive relationships. And Lena, she found her courage again. She kept working at the diner, but this time with her head held high. Sometimes the bikers would come by for coffee and she'd smile, a real smile. Rex would tip his head, proud but humble, never saying much. But one evening, as the sun dipped low, she walked to their table and said, "You saved my life." Rex looked up, his eyes soft. "Nah," he said quietly. "You saved your own. We just reminded you how strong you already were." The diner's walls seemed warmer after that day. People began to greet the bikers with nods instead of fear. And when anyone new asked about the Iron Souls, someone would always smile and say, "They're the kind of men who see what others ignore." If this story touched your heart, if you believe that real strength is in protecting, not hurting, please take a moment to like, comment, and share this video. Help us spread kindness and show the world that compassion can come from the most unexpected places. Speech Balloon special request. Drop a comment below and tell us, what would you have done if you were in Rex's place? Because sometimes, one act of courage can change an entire life, and even an entire town.